Could you recognize a virtue as inherently good, even if it is one that you may never possess? This is Jack Donovan. I'm going to start recording my newsletters and essays as videos and start posting them to the Order of Fire's YouTube channel. The Order of Fire is the cultural movement that I founded to advance the philosophy of solar idealism, along with my men's group, the First Men. So, if you'd rather listen to newsletters and essays like this one, I encourage you to do so there. I do a weekly live show called PH2T3R with my co-host CB Robertson on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Right now we're doing a read-through of Homer's Odyssey. So please subscribe, and if you like what you read and see there, leave us a comment. Now I'll return to the letter, titled The Strange Kingdom of the Fox. So many social and cultural problems we see today are the product of affirmed and institutionalized copes. Fat acceptance is an obvious example. Many, if not most, modern health problems are downstream from obesity, from foot, knee, and hip issues to hormonal problems, types of diabetes, and heart disease. However, most people live relatively sedentary lifestyles and food is abundant. Foods with high calories and low nutrients are cheap and aggressively marketed everywhere, and chemically altered foods are addictively delicious. Human social rituals and celebrations have long been organized around food, from family dinners to sacrifices and religious feasts. The problem is that people can feast every day, and they move a lot less. So it is easy to gain weight and difficult for many to lose it. Rather than address the problem, many decided to attempt to redefine both beauty and health to accommodate and even celebrate obesity. Now, as I've written before, especially in A More Complete Beast, men today feel like the world is upside down. One reason is that so many of these obvious coping mechanisms have been integrated into mainstream culture. What seems obviously true, that humans would value and encourage health and beauty, is publicly undermined. Sour grapes. Æsop is traditionally described as an ancient Greek slave and storyteller whose fables were repeated and probably written down long after his death, as is so often the case with the sayings of famous men. You've probably heard the phrase sour grapes, and maybe you read the story of the fox and the grapes as a child. It's a story about cope, or a coping mechanism, from between 620 and 564 BCE. I'll retell it here for good measure. One hot summer's day, a fox was strolling through an orchard till he came to a bunch of grapes just ripening on a vine which had been trained over a lofty branch. "Just the thing to quench my thirst," quoth he. Drawing back a few paces, he took a run and a jump, and just missed the bunch. Turning round again with a 1, 2, 3, he jumped up, but with no greater success. Again and again he tried after the tempting morsel, but at last had to give it up, and walked away with his nose in the air, saying, "I am sure they are sour." From the Fables of Æsop, 1922, Joseph Jacobs. Men think the world is upside down because we are living in the strange kingdom of the fox, where things that are difficult to reach are often defamed and devalued simply because they are difficult to reach. In Fire in the Dark, I wrote about returning to human ideals that would have been recognized as intrinsic goods by most rational men in most times and places. In my men's group, the First Men of the Order of Fire, which I like to think of as something like the Freemasons entering its 3rd year, we've taken to calling these timeless ideals holy positives. Simple statements that are true as general rules within some golden mean between excess and deficiency. I'm sure that most of you would agree that it is better to be strong than it is to be weak, that it is better to be free than it is to be a slave. It is better to be courageous than it is to be fearful. It is better to be healthy than it is to be sick. It is better to be beautiful than it is to be ugly. These are simple human truths that are, in many cases, rooted in our ability to survive hardship as a species. I was discussing these holy positives with the first men recently, and I told them that one of my tests for identifying a holy positive was this question. Could you recognize a virtue as inherently good, even if it is one that you might never possess? It takes self-awareness and honesty for a man to say, this quality is better to have, even if I may never have it myself. Example, it is probably better for men to be between 6 foot and 6'4". Most shorter men recognize this and make peace with it. I'm 5'10". What do you think the fox would say? Most men agree that it is generally better to be strong than it is to be weak. What do you think the fox would say? A tricky one for many, especially those who don't have very much money, is wealth. Isn't it always better to have money? What do you think the fox would say? We all tell ourselves little stories about why the things we don't have are not really worth having. You should check yourself on this. If we want to turn the world right side up again, we have to be able to admit that the grapes are ripe, even when we cannot reach them ourselves. This is Jack Donovan. Stay solar.